have to ask on the way, you may have to ask some passerby, am I on the right road going to the ISKCON temple, or am I the right road going to Loy Bazaar? But ultimately, it's your, you have to take responsibility for your own trip. So my point was just that I was just saying that that the idea of the guru, idea that the spiritual master has to be perfect in all respects, is actually a bit of a misunderstanding of the tattva. It's a misunderstanding of the tattva because when we say pada rajo vishekam, that without pada rajo naishamatis tava durukrama angrim, the verse says that that the anarthas, to get rid of the anarthas, you won't have the proper mati, you won't have the proper intelligence or the proper mental orientation to be able to get free of those things. So the main thing, sambandha videya and prayojan tattvas, that's what the main thing that the guru is giving you. He's giving you sambandha, avideya, and prayojan. But as you progress on, you may clarify that thing. You're clarifying it according to your own personal, individual needs and taste. Because ultimately, every one of us is an individual, and every one of us has our own particular relationship with the absolute truth. And so that as we progress in spiritual life, that individual and personal relationship with the absolute truth becomes clarified. It becomes clear to us. So that's the important thing. That's the important thing. So still, that doesn't change the fact that I'm heading towards God because of the orientation that my spiritual master gave me. And that therefore the spiritual master is the divine. I always see the spiritual master. I don't lose faith in the spiritual master, even though, just like in Rupa Goswami says in Upadeshamrita, that just like the Ganga water is filled with mud and bubbles and other flotsam and jetsam and so on, that doesn't mean that the Ganges has lost its supernatural or its transcendental power. It's a question that it hasn't lost that power, so if you have to be able to see. And that same thing, that same principle does not just simply apply to the body. Because when we read that, we say that, oh, it's just applying to the body. I see my guru limping, or I see my guru falling asleep, or I see my guru, making a mistake, something like that. But it applies also to all levels of the guru's life. All levels. It applies to his what he says and what he does as well. So if you see some flaw in the guru, it doesn't just mean that you see some flaw in the way that in his physical body. It's also in his mind and in his actions. So the point is that you have to if you have been inspired to go on the path of spiritual life, you've been inspired to progress on the path of spiritual life, then you have to have faith in the source. The tree grows out of a seed. So you have to, if you think the seed is no good, then you won't even plant it. You won't grow it. But if you've planted the seed and the tree is growing, then you can't just change. Don't change in midstream and say that the seed is no good. Your tree is growing. So keep on doing the process of watering the tree and of serving the tree, so that you're like the lata, water the tree with shravanam and kirtanam, the practices of bhakti yoga. Grow that tree until it winds around the lotus feet of the Lord. Okay, I'm off topic as always. So here we go on. Here says now he's talking about the tasya purushasya. So tasya purushasya. So the word purusha, we've talked a bit about the word purusha. So he's using the word purusha again. So purusha, the word that, as I was explaining, I think the other day, the purusha means pur, it means in the town, And that's a metaphorical speaking for the body, because you have the body with 9 gates. Navadvare pure dehi. So the Navadvara pura is the body. So he who resides within the body, namely the soul, that's the Purusha. So now he's saying, well, how does that apply to, so here the first thing, but he's giving the first meaning of Purusha as Purushottama. So he says Purusha, Purushasya means Purushottamasya, the Supreme Spirit. So Purusha means spirit, and Purushottama means the Supreme Spirit. So in that he says, okay, Purushottam. So in the case of Krishna, what does Purushottama mean? So in the Bhagavad Gita, when the word Purushottam is being used, at the end of the 15th chapter, right? No, 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called Purushottama Yoga. So in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the last 5 or 6 verses are all about the Purushottama, right? So there it's saying that that there's a supreme spirit. It's a very important chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. So, but here he says that the Purushottam doesn't just mean the Supreme Spirit. Purusha, as I explained also before, that Purusha not only has that meaning as the spirit, it also means the male, a man. Purusha means man, like when we say a Purush, like if you look on the toilets in the airport, on the men's toilet it says Purusha. So he's saying that Purusha means male. So Purushotta means the supreme male. So now here he's saying that Rasika, which is significant for our philosophy, because we're saying that's a limited conception of God. So Rasika Nayaka Shiromani. So he says that the meaning here we want for Purushottam is that he's the Rasika Nayaka Shiromani. He's the Shiromani means the crest jewel, the jewel on the head. Shiro means head, mani means jewel. So the jewel on the head, the crown of all the Nayakas, the Rasika Nayakas. So a Nayaka is a word which is specifically taken from the Rasa Shastra. So in the Rasa Shastras we talk about Nayaka and Nayika. The Nayaka means the lover, and the Nayika means the lover, the female lover. So the hero and the heroine. So in a play we talk about who's the hero, who's the heroine, who's got the leading part. In this film or in this play, you know, the hero is Krishna, so he's the Nayaka, and the heroine is Nayika is Radha. But for instance, the Nayaka it doesn't have to be for the Madhura Rasa only. Generally speaking, when we talk about the Nayaka, we're talking about Madhura Rasa, we're talking about the romantic mood. But in this particular case, he says that it's the Rasika Nayaka Shiromani, so it's the Nayaka for Shringara Rasa. So the supreme lover, the supreme hero, the supreme hero lover, that's Krishna. So that's what when we say Purushottam, when we say here in this verse, the Purushasya Tasya, that's the Purusha we're talking about. That's the Purusha that Brahma, Rudra, Shuka, Narada, Bhishma, that's what they're not getting. That's what they're not getting. They're still seeing Krishna in terms of Parameshwara.
And they also see themselves as the Purusha. So they
yes,
cannot
exactly.
attend Krishna.
Exactly. And that was the first point also. That was also the first point because that we were talking, I think it was the other day, we were talking about masculine and feminine approaches to sadhana. And when Swamiji Maharaj just says the right thing, he says you have your Purushabhiman. Purushabhiman doesn't just mean thinking that, you know, this is the problem with the Siddhadeha meditation for people. It doesn't matter, you know, you can be meditating on yourself in a Siddha Deha as having a female body. But that's not really where the change takes place. The change is going to take place in the mind and in the heart. That's where the real changes are taking place, not in the external body. So if you're meditating on a Gopi Swarup, you know, and you're not, and you have, of course, you might find it anukul, you might find it helpful, but for most men, that's going to be very much a difficult procedure unless you're a transvestite by inclination, that you're not going to find that particularly helpful. You're going to consider it a sadhana that is being conducted in a male manner. Yes.
We spoke last time about Ramdas Babaji and his guru. He used to put...
Ramdas Babaji had a guru, a godbrother whose name is Lalita Sakhi. Okay. Now that's Lalita Sakhi, and if you you went to Samaj Bari, and he was in Samaj Bari, and his samadhi is also there in Samaj Bari. So even today in Samaj Bari, the pujaris dress as women. So that's this is one of, because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was viscerally against the Nitai Gaur Radhesham people. So this was one of the reasons. So the Sakhi Beki, they said that, but these guys, I mean, I know these people, and I can tell you, well anyway.
Tell us.
Full of these little gossipy informations. In my experience, these gentlemen are all gay gentlemen.
Okay, so it's easier to...
Yeah, so so for them they have that like I'm saying, that they have a transvestite inclination. So nothing, as far as I'm concerned, in India people are a lot more tolerant in the way of these. It's funny because we think of India as a very conformist society, but in India you have a lot of eccentrics. Maybe it's because they didn't have insane asylums where they could throw everybody. This person is weird, get him off the street, It's just, if a person was strange, he would be on the street and everybody would see him. So you often see people in India, you're walking down the street and there's someone, talking to the sky or doing something, dressed in very, very... In Navadvip we had there was one crazy fellow who was a devotee. And he used to wear rags, that were of all different colors. He would take all rags of different colors from old saris and things like that. And he wore he looked like a Christmas tree because he was just covered in these strange, rags. So and he was babbling, and he was babbling all the time, and he was babbling, stuff that was Krishna conscious. They're talking about Mahaprabhu, talking to Mahaprabhu, talking, So, I mean, still, he's schizophrenic for sure, but they didn't have they more or less allowed these people to function, and they would treat. Here in Vrindavan also there used to be a fellow in Loy Bazaar who would dress like he would dress like he was from the Swami Haridas Sampradaya, and he also wore very colorful cloth. I don't know if this is a symptom, but he would always carry feathers.
Yeah.
Do you remember? He would carry a bunch of peacock feathers all the time, and also he also had a very dramatic appearance. And so he would walk around. He was talking with everybody and.
Maybe they are partly realized, like they're... Well,
that's the thing. In India, you have the madness of the saints. You see, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, in some senses, a kind of a madman. I mean, you couldn't keep him locked in his room. They would lock the room, and because they didn't, they were afraid he was going to. Go out and do something foolish, and still somehow or another they would say how many doors they locked. They locked his room, they locked the outside wall, they locked the outside wall to that, and still somehow or another they would go and Mahaprabhu was not in his room. And then, Swarup Damodar and Govinda, they say, oh my Lord, they gotta do it, they gotta go looking for him again. And then, you know, we told the story already how he fell in the ocean, you know, came out, and, you know. So he was doing this on a regular. You'd go out for a walk with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and some woman is chanting a song from the Gita Govinda, and before you know it, Mahaprabhu is running like a madman to go and, you know, where is that sound coming from? You know, I've got to embrace that person, because that person has given me a taste of Krishna Bhav. And then they had to hold him back, you know, hold him to stop, Mahaprabhu, you're a sannyasi, it's a woman. So Mahaprabhu would say, thank you, you saved my life. It would be worse than death if I touched a woman. Purushasya tasya. Okay? So the meaning, going back to Purushasya tasya. So the Purushasya, Purushottamasya. So he says that the Purushottam Rasika Nayaka Shiromani. And then he gives, so the meaning the Purusha, the Purushottama, Purusha here, the first meaning he gives is Purushottama, but he defines Purushottama not to mean the Purushottama the way that in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, but Purushottama to mean the Rasika Nayaka Shiromani. That he is your dramatic lead, he is the Amitabha Bachchan of Goloka. So here people don't know who Amitabha Bachchan is. Amitabha Bachchan is the #1 actor in India. Now he's getting old, but still he's the one. He appears in, you know, you can see him on any newspaper any day of the week. And you probably see 5 pictures of him in the newspaper advertising 5 different things. He's also the host of So You Want to Be a Millionaire in India. Anyway, but he was the, you know, the male lead. You know, if you wanted to make a successful film, a romantic comedy, that he was the man for the job. So Krishna, I mean, I don't want to minimize Krishna, but that, you know, we're using the terms of Rasa Shastra. We're using the terms of the Rasa Shastra because that's important for us in our way of understanding how spiritual experience operates. Just try to understand this. We have basically 2 kinds of spiritual experience in India, right? You've got the Brahma experience, you have the Brahma experience, the yoga experience, and so on, which is about stilling the mind and quietening down and being, you know, and having having concentration or of consciousness of nothing. That's the goal. The goal is to be conscious of your own being, yourself in your own being, your own Satchidananda Swarup. That's what the goal is about. Now, in the Vaishnava system, that's not the goal. We're also becoming one with God, in the same way that the Brahmavadis are becoming one with God. But the oneness with God, that is being... one of these days, I'll go through these verses with you. I even put them... I wasn't going... Anyway, one of these days, I'm going to go through these verses with everybody, if you're still here. And just explain to you that, you know, how this functions. The idea is that our spiritual experience is called rasa. Our spiritual experience is called rasa. It's called raso vaisaha. And so Rupa Goswami, in a state of inspiration, based on the historical developments in the Indian understanding of bhakti, and the Bhagavata Purana especially, came to constructed a theory of how religious or spiritual experience is similar or parallel to the experience of rasa that comes when you watch a play or read a book or read a novel or, you know, like that. It's not exactly the same because we're talking about something different, but it's very similar and it's parallel, and in some ways it functions exactly in the same way. It has the same kinds of ingredients, sthai bhav, anubhav, vibhav, alambana, all these terminologies. All this terminology doesn't come from the Bhakti Shastra. All this terminology does not come from the Puranas. It does not come from the Bhagavata Purana. It doesn't come from the Upanishads. It doesn't come from anywhere except from Bharata's Natya Shastra and the whole tradition of putting on a play. You know, the Bharata Muni created the Natya Shastra, and that Natya Shastra is where he explains how rasa, he gives the rasa formula. There's what you call the Rasa Sutra, and that we can call that the Rasa formula. And so Rupa Goswami has used the Rasa formula and develops, and I mean, of course, he's coming 1,500 years or so after Bharata, so there's been a lot going on in the 1,500 years. But still, basically that one inspiration, that one insight of Bharata Muni is what's been carried through the whole tradition. And that's what Rupa Goswami is basing on. But Rupa Goswami's insight is an original revelation. Okay. Rupa Goswami is a seer. His insight his insight is unique and original. So, we have a tendency to think that what is always was, but what is was not always. And so if you can't, that's for me, it's important to be able to see where the new information comes in, to see the original contribution, and that way we can understand the mahima, the greatness of Rupa Goswami. So to get back to this, so Purushasya Tasya, so the Nayaka Shiromani, that was what Krishna is. He's the main actor. Put it that way, he's the main actor. We all know that already. If you translate actor as karta, he's the supreme karta. But here we're using, instead of actor, we're using actor as the person in a play, and that's a nayaka. So arpan, on English word actor, in Sanskrit has to have two different words. Alright, so then he goes on and says, this is where we got to yesterday. So Jagadananda is already aware. So Puri, he says, so he makes a nice little thing. Puri, he says, okay, Puri meant the city, right? So Pur meant city, so Puri means in the city. So Vasati, Usha means Vasati. So Puri Vasati ti arte. So if you take that meaning of residing within the body as being the meaning of Purusha, then he says the Pura, the city here is Vrindavan. And his Ekavasina means that he only resides in Vrindavan. So Vrindavan means the place that Radharani is the Ishwari.
Yeah.
We talked about this in the last class when I was describing the Rasa Lila at Jai Singhera, that this argument about when they're picking the flowers, who is the boss, who is the owner of this flower garden, who is the owner of Vrindavan, is it Vrindavaneshwara or is it Vrindavaneshwari? Radha is Vrindavaneshwari. So Krishna only stays in Vrindavan because she rules. Radharani rules in Vrindavan.
And he is the gardener.
He's the gardener, he's the Mali.
Banamali.
Vanamali.
Working in the garden of Radha.
That's good, yes. The Das. So this is the meaning of Purusha. So he's a Purush, that's very good, that makes a good connection. So meaning that he's the gardener for Radharani, that's the meaning of Purusha. That's the real meaning of his manhood. Okay. So his manhood becomes fulfilled that way. Okay. So I was thinking I'll just say another verse. Or you want to say something else?
If we go back to this, you spoke about Guru.
Yeah.
In the Krishna Samhita of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says that some demons were killed by Krishna and some by Balaram. And Balaram means the Guru. Guru can destroy some anarthas. Can you give this difference? Why Guru, why not Krishna?
I'd have to read that because my memory is not clear. I mean, obviously I've read it, but I don't remember that particular distinction.
Some demons like someone others.
Yeah, I know, because you see what's interesting about Krishna Samhita. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote Krishna Samhita, and I don't know if there was a bit of a controversy that came up because Shukavak wrote a book about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which was called Hinduism and Modernity or something like this. So in that book he's especially talking about Krishna Samhita. And the Krishna Samhita, because in Krishna Samhita, especially in the preface to Krishna Samhita, Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about things like evolution and so on. And he's talking about current streams of thought that would have been present when he wrote the book, and trying to accommodate the Vaishnava understanding of their own history and the history of the... I mean, this was quite something that was going on at the time, as you could probably understand, that you had in the contact of East and West, that you had so many people, Western researchers coming to India, and good researchers, British researchers and German researchers who were coming, and then they were making all kinds of judgments, and they were reading the scriptures, but in a different way than people used to read them. They were reading them for historical facts and historical information and so on. And so they came up with, there were a lot of controversies about dates, and those dates, for some people, those dates still go on. I mean, the tradition says the Bhagavatam was written 5,000 years ago, but that doesn't stand up to scrutiny. So now the question was, and the thing is that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote his book just after Bankim Chatterjee wrote his book on Krishna, called Sri Krishna Charit. Now, Bankim Chandra was like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, was a member of the civil service, was a magistrate. I think he was a bit senior to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and because he wrote novels and stuff, he was quite famous. He was better known than Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for sure. And he was better known than Bhaktivinoda Thakur because he was more widely accepted in the society. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had taken a Vaishnavism, whereas Bankim Chandra was more secular. And so Bankim Chandra was more speaking to the Bhadralok. And if you read that book by Shukavak, he's particularly concerned about this Bhadralok. That Bhaktivinoda Thakur is also trying to speak to the Bhadralok. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur entered that conversation, but his Krishna Samhita never made the same kind of impact that Krishna Charitra did. Because also in Krishna Charit, what Bankim Chatterjee was doing was trying to get the activist Krishna. Bankim Chatterjee wanted to have a hero. He wanted to have a Hindu hero who was worldly, right? Because Bankim Chatterjee was thinking of how do we bring India into the modern age, and that was his chief purpose. He was thinking that one of Bankim Chandra's, probably the most famous book that Bankim Chandra wrote, a novella, was called Ananda Mat. And in that Ananda Mat, it's a historical novella that is supposed to take place during the 18th century, when there was a sannyasi uprising, a so-called sannyasi uprising. Now the historical data, they say that Bankim Chandra's history is completely askew. But he used that situation. He used what happened was this sannyasi uprising. What the sannyasi uprising was, that in the 18th century there were sannyasis that traveled all over India in groups. Like sometimes you still see. Gurus would travel with their disciples, and maybe a guru, sometimes he'd have 20, 30, 40 disciples. Like you think of Durvasa Muni with his thousands of disciples coming to Draupadi and saying, "Feed us." Yeah? So there were these kinds of traveling troops of sannyasis, of yogis, and they would be traveling over India, and you can just imagine sometimes they would come to